All right, great. So everyone, today we're here to talk about business development strategies. This is one of the major topics when it comes to business development, because of course, there are so many ways of doing BD. And with this webinar, we really just want to give you some insights into what are the main business development strategies and some tips for you to adjust them to your specific case. So today the agenda includes the top strategies. With the top strategies, we're going to do an introduction and an introduction into the process of these strategies, how they work, and what's the role of business development within these strategies and the relation with other departments. Then we're going to see what are some of the things or the steps we can take when choosing our strategy. And then we have 3 examples based on 3 different types of companies with some examples of tactics that you can use just to make it a little bit more practical. Goals of this webinar, we like to always have a little bit of goals in mind and start with those so that at the end we can look back and say, well, okay, that kind of fits. So first goal and objective of this webinar is really to help you leverage different business development strategies, mainly because oftentimes BDs really tend to use the same strategies or tactics than other companies. However, you will see that once you really start understanding your ecosystem, then you can really personalize your approach and really make a difference with your business development role. Of course, the other goal is to personalize your approach when it comes to BD, obviously improving the business outcomes, however you define business success in your company, and obviously staying ahead of the competition. Let's take a step back and really look at what is business development. Now, when it comes to business development, that was really one of the first things that I realized when I started the BD school about 5 years ago, is that it's a very confusing topic, right? So everybody thinks it's something different or it's something very specific, and then we kind of limit ourselves in what is BD. Now, we surveyed a lot of people throughout these 5 years, and we trained more than 500 people. So we have a pretty good idea of how confusing even the simple definition of business development can be. Now, many people consider business development as sales. You probably heard this, and maybe you're not particularly happy about it. Some other people think that business development is partnerships, hustling, international expansion, closing deals, and so on. Now, business development is all of these things and none of these things, we could say, because it is very complex, right? So we cannot just say that business development is sales, because we're going to see there's some cases in which maybe sales is not even involved in the first place, or at least not the traditional way we look at sales. So what we're going to see now is actually many of these things that can actually be considered strategies, and then we're going to see in the second part of this webinar how we can apply these strategies and how we can build the perfect strategy for our company. Now, the strategies we're going to look at are strategic business development, product development, marketing, sales, partnership, and market entry. And before we go any further, a little, let's say, to solve any doubts that we might have in our mind, I want to make a quick definition, a quick distinction on what is strategy and what is tactics, because I know I can already foresee that some questions will arise around these two things. Now, when we're talking about strategy, we are talking about a very high level approach, right? So we're really thinking about a plan of action, let's say, that is really based on very high level data. For example, the market, right? So how big is the market? Who are your competitors, and so on. But it's very high level. Whereas tactics, of course, are really specific actions that are, of course, meant to implement our strategy, but they're very specific actions. Strategy is also very long-term. It has a very long-term focus. So we're really going to think, okay, how do we want the company to be in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years from now? Whereas tactics, they have a very short-term focus, right? So how can we get 100 leads within 1 week, for example, right? So it's a very short-term focus. Strategy also provides us with decision-making frameworks, but it doesn't go really much in detail in how we're going to do or how we're going to realize this strategy. On the other hand, tactics are very operational. So we're going to see that when we talk about tactics, it's actually all about very specific details on how we're going to do that specific thing, which can be being active on LinkedIn. What does that mean? How do we generate leads on LinkedIn? That could be one tactic, which will be part of a bigger strategy for the company. And last important distinction, strategies tend to be much more stable over time. So it's not, the strategy doesn't change one day to another. It's usually a long-term plan which runs over a few years or few months if we're a young company, but it tends to be a lot more stable than the tactics. The tactics are a lot more flexible. They should be, because of course they need to follow the trends, they need to follow new technologies and so on. So the tactics can change relatively fast. The processes around these tactics can change relatively fast. Strategy is not the case. The strategy usually stays for a longer time frame. But it's really strategic business development, which means mapping out your ecosystem and really understanding what are all the stakeholders that are important for you, and then using this ecosystem to generate these opportunities. We're going to see later on how to do that. Now, what is the process of the strategic business development? Now, when we're doing strategic business development, the first thing we're doing is really positioning our company, right? So it's really about defining our mission, our vision, our goals, and really starting from our identity. So who we are as a company, what do we offer, what do we want to achieve on the long term, and really taking place in our market, in our ecosystem. The second step is, of course, research, researching your market, your competitors, your customers, analyzing the data, and then building an action plan full of all these tactics we talked about before, right, that can help you achieve your goals. Now, strategic business development is one of the most important things we do in business development. And as you see here, the business developers take the entire spectrum of the process, because we are in charge of these of all these steps, or we should be. Once again, if you're working for a company where your business development plan or business development strategy is already made, do put an effort into studying these things, asking questions to your manager, to your colleagues, to really understand your ecosystem, and then really understand where are these opportunities for growth. Product development is a very important strategy in BD as well. Why? Because if we have new products or new features, new characteristics for our product or services, obviously we can fit the need, or we can solve the needs of our customers, right? Additional needs, or we can even open a new customer segment with these new features or new products. So obviously it's a very important strategy for growth. It doesn't apply all the time, especially if you have a very established service, which is very structured and doesn't change much over time. Could be, for example, the case of insurance companies. I mean, obviously you can always repackage things as you want, but when it comes to financial products, you don't have really much flexibility, right? Your product stays pretty much the same. Now, here we see that business development is not involved in the entire process. Why? Because we're not necessarily technical people if we work for tech companies, but we might not have the authority also to change or develop new features or new services. So business developers are really involved in the first part of the process, meaning idea generation and research. Why idea generation? Because obviously we're always in touch with our main stakeholders, be it customers or partners, which means we can actually get a lot of insights, a lot of input from them, which we can transform into features and new products. However, the analysis and development of these features is done in collaboration with other teams, and then BDs come back in the launching phase, right, of these new features, new products. As business developers, we're very generalists, right? So also in the case of marketing, we're not involved in the entire process. Again, always take it with a pinch of salt, because it really depends on the type of company you're working for, right? So if you're the only business developer and you work just with the founder of the company and it's just the two of you, chances are you're doing most of the things regardless of the strategy you use, right? But typically, if you work for a bigger company, you're not going to be involved in all the processes. So when it comes to marketing, you are involved in the first part, so really meaning defining the mission, once again, the values of the company, really the identity of the company, doing the research, especially in the part of the ecosystem that matters the most, meaning the customers, and then everything which is marketing strategy, marketing mix is done directly by the marketing team or in collaboration, and then you come back with the execution. Because when we're talking about sales and business development, I think sales BD is always the most blurred of all the relationships with the strategies and departments, because many companies do treat BD primarily as sales. However, when we're talking about sales, we're really talking about something very specific, which is selling to a very specific customer type a certain amount of goods or services in a given time period. What we do in BD is to generate long-term value for the company from markets, customers, and relationships. So not necessarily through selling goods in a specific time frame, but it can be exploring different segments, different markets, creating new value propositions and testing them, exploring new channels, and so on. So sales is a lot more defined in the sense that once you know who are your customers and what they want, you just repeat that process. While in BD, what we're doing is, how can we make the process of generating revenue more efficient? What else can we do? How can we do things differently so that we generate this value? Now, for the typical distinction, let's say, of BD and sales, what is the best practice, let's say, and that's especially for tech companies, I must say, is really having business developers specializing on the first of the beginning stages of the sales process, which is really going to find potential customers which are not really aware of your solution, helping them educate themselves and really being aware of their pain points, and then choose your solution. So typically, and we see it especially in SaaS companies, we have these two different functions, the SDRs or BDRs, so business development reps, sales development reps, which are really the ones in charge of hunting new leads, right? And what we do is really these ones are generating awareness and then educating people on our solution, so that then the account executives can close the deals and so on. Now, once again, if you work in a company which are the only business developers, most likely you're going to be doing the entire sales process. But let's say in terms of best practices or what's happening at the moment in the market, that's usually this distinction. So generally, as BD, you're really in the first stages of the sales process. Now, strategic partnerships are a very powerful strategy because, of course, it can help you mitigate the risks of launching new initiatives, new value proposition, new products, because you combine forces with another company that has a similar capability to yours, or maybe complementary to yours. But of course, without taking away from the strategic partnership BD people, strategic partnerships are indeed a very important part of BD. And typically, business developers are in charge of the entire process, meaning setting the goal for this partnership, selecting the right partner, negotiating the terms, implementing the contract, and then managing the contract or the agreement with your partner. So market entry is both international expansion, but also entering into different market segments. Now, when we're talking about market entry, again, depending on the type of market entry we're doing, business developers are not involved in the entire process necessarily. You might collaborate with other teams, from technical teams, marketing, sales, and so on. But of course, you can be involved in the first stages, so really the research phase and the selection phase of this new market, and then with the entry, meaning you're going to be the first one to go to market, talk to people, explore a little bit, and then see how things go, evaluate the market entry, and see if it's efficient. I know that it was very fast, this first part. I didn't want to go too much in detail. It's interesting to know what are all the different strategies, but I think it's more interesting to understand how and which one we should choose for our business, and what are the elements we need to take into account when building this strategy. So here we are. Now, the first thing we need to do is, of course, what we said at the beginning, which is mapping out your ecosystem. I realize that this image now really looks like a flower. That was not intended. I just really do love a lot of colors. Now, when we're mapping the ecosystem, what we're doing is basically trying to figure out who is active in our market, right? I do love this example of the recruitment software because I did work for one. But let's say we are a recruitment software company, right? So in our ecosystem, we are in the center. We want to be a little bit egocentric when we're building our own ecosystem map. We put our company in the center. And then we start thinking, all right, so we sell this recruitment software. Who are we selling it to? What type of customers do we want to have? Well, most likely our customers will be companies. So we're probably a B2B company because recruitment software companies do recruitment, right? So the first stakeholder that we're going to have on our ecosystem map is, of course, our customers. All right, great. Can you please mute yourselves? Or, Bina, if you can mute everyone. Excellent, thanks. Then, of course, we want to look at the competitors, right? Oh, okay, great. We want to get into this market. We want to target this specific type of customers, so B2B companies. Who are the competitors? What other recruitment software are there in the market so that people can choose from, right? So we want to look at the other important stakeholder, which is our competitors. And then we want to think, all right, what other type of companies are active in this space? Right? So let's say in the recruitment space. Well, in the recruitment space, you're going to find recruitment agencies, you're going to find headhunters, you're going to find freelance consultants that consult companies on HR or recruitment practices. You have job portals, you have universities as well, right? So here you can include all these actors, these stakeholders that have something similar or complementary to you into the partners segment. And then you start thinking, okay, what else is in there, right? What type of institutions we could involve? Well, I mentioned universities, for example. Obviously, everybody that finishes a university wants to find a job, right? Or maybe the university has a job portal with relations with companies that are hiring, right? And then you can use the university as a channel to expand your reach, right? And to target other customers. And then, of course, you have media. So pretty much in any market, in any segment, you're going to find a lot of media that talk, like very specialized media that talk about your industry. In our case, in the e-learning industry, there is one website which is called elearningindustry.com. And it's the media par excellence, right? So we read a lot about e-learning and how that word is shaping and so on. It's a place where we get a lot of knowledge so that we can improve what we do, but it's also a place where we could be showcasing what we do, right? Because all these other companies read this media as well. But there can be any other type of media that is targeted to your customers. And then regarding, depending on your specific case, you might have a lot of other stakeholders, which now I can think of, but probably you have a lot of other stakeholders which are really specialized in your industry, in your market, which you want to take into account. Now, why it's important to have, to do this ecosystem map, because we need to understand how and how we should operate in this market, right? So if we operate in a market which is very small, there are just, let's say, 3 customers, there is no media because it's an industry that nobody cares about, there is no institution that is dedicated to this specific sector, there aren't other companies offering something complementary. How do we do to get to these customers? What's the most efficient way to gain this customer base, right? And this market share. So once we know how this ecosystem looks like, which colors you have in there, it becomes a lot easier then to decide which strategies we should implement to get most of this market share or not necessarily most of the market share, but whatever market share we want to get, this ecosystem map is going to help us to define the most efficient strategy. So the first thing we need to do is really to have very thorough market research. That's really the baseline where we want to start, because it's going to give us a lot of insights into how to build our strategy and what tactics to choose. We want to look at our competitors. If we have a lot of competitors all doing the same things, we're going to need to do things differently if we want to win in the market, right? Or maybe we just want to copy exactly what they do, because, well, we see that they're very successful. We change just one parameter in our company and we think we're going to win in that market. Obviously, we want to do a very thorough customer research, super important. If we don't know our customers, we cannot really do much. We need to know their pain points, what they're trying to achieve, and how we can help them. And then we want to analyze all the other stakeholders. So I mentioned universities, institutions, it can be literally anything. Now, what are the criteria that we want to use when choosing our strategy? The first one is the market size. Now, if we operate in a very big market, obviously the strategies we need to take into account are strategies that enable us to reach mass market in the fastest possible way, right? For example, through paid ads. Right, so we could do Google ads and then try to reach as many people as possible in a specific area, right? The other one is the competitiveness, right? So how competitive is this market? Once again, if there are a lot of competitors, what is the most efficient way for us to gain this market share? Do we do more direct sales, or do we do events, or do we go to, we use more marketing related things? So we do, I don't know, huge campaigns, offline campaigns, we put billboards and so on, right? So depending on what our competitors are doing, we should take that into account to then adjust our strategy. The other thing is the budget, right? So yeah, I just mentioned offline billboards, right? That's great. I think it's amazing to see your company logo in all the bus stops in Amsterdam or wherever you're located. But can we afford that as a company, right? So do we have enough budget to enable the implementation of our strategy? We need to be realistic, right? So we cannot, if we're a startup and we're just starting and we're bootstrapping, so we don't have investors, we obviously cannot go directly for offline campaigns, right? So maybe we're going to think of something a little bit more cost effective, for example, mass email marketing campaigns, right? So that's a little bit cheaper. We could do that. We can reach a lot of people in a certain amount, in a specific amount of time. The budget, of course, is very important. The other one is other resources. So budget, obviously, money is a very important resource for every company, but that's not all. Do we have enough time? Do we have enough people in the team to do whatever strategy or to implement whatever strategy we want to? For example, if we want to start organizing events, that's something we're busy with at the moment with the BD School. If we want to organize events, what type of events do we do? If it's offline, do we have enough people to invite as many people as we want to attend? Or do we have enough budget to organize an event in a specific location, right? So we really need to think in terms of our resources. And the last selection criteria is capability. Do you have the capability to realize the strategy you think is the most efficient? If not, how are you going to achieve that, right? For example, okay, great, I have an e-commerce and I'm selling tennis rackets, just very randomly. I want to sell tennis rackets on this e-commerce. Okay, great. I think that one of the strategies for me to achieve that would be to partner up with, I don't know, the tennis league of my country, right? Great. Do I have connections there? Do I have the trust, or do I have am I a trustworthy person to go to talk to the national league? Do I have enough communication skills, for example, to go to talk to them? Or if I decide that I want to do only campaigns, like big marketing campaigns, am I able alone, if I'm just the only one in the company, am I able to create these campaigns, or am I just going to waste time? if I'm going to waste time and money, what is something else I could do that enables me to reach the same amount of people, but in a way that I can actually do it, right? So that I'm not putting myself in weird situations in which I'm just not going to be able to do a campaign that yields the results I want, right? So once we look at all these things, so how big is the market, the competitors, the budget, and so on, we can really create a strategy that then helps us achieve our goals. Of course, I omitted that, but the first thing that we should have in mind is our goals. So do we want to achieve with our strategy? Now, let's look at a couple of examples and let's see what tactics we could implement in hypothetical scenarios. Let's take, for example, a type of company. This is actually a case study on one of our B2B clients. They are a digital transformation agency, and they work primarily with the government. They don't have commercial companies that much. They primarily work with the government. Now, if we're talking with the government, obviously we cannot have a strategy which is primarily based on mass, campaigns, big billboards, and Google ad campaigns or Facebook campaigns, and so on, right? It would be a huge waste of money because government people are not looking for solutions on Facebook. And they're not looking for solution necessarily on Google Ads, right? Typically, how government buys services or buy solution is through a call for proposals, right? So that's one way. So that's why one of the tactics we could use would be through bids and tenders. So we check what are the calls for proposals for governments, and then we join these tender platforms, we keep updated, and then we send our proposal if we think we are the right fit for this specific government, right? So that could be one way. The other thing would be to create and to form partnerships and alliances with government partners, right? Because maybe we can collaborate on a specific project that then gives us access to bigger projects, right? We could join a panel of experts that is advising the government on a very specific issue, build relationships, and then use these relationships to get more projects within the government, right? And the other thing we could do would be to attend government conferences and events, right? Why? Because these enable us to network, build relationships, and then use these connections to propose our solution to these government clients. Now, again, so here, if we look really purely at a digital transformation agency that works with government, our main strategy should really be focused on building relationships, forming collaborations and partnerships, and of course, using bids and tenders. We're not going to use marketing. We're not going to use product development, because most of the times when we work with government, we're going to have very specific, very tailored solutions for government clients. We're not going to use any of that. That's going to be very useless. We want to focus a lot more on the relationship side and networking, right? So it's really about people. So more on the strategic partnerships side. And here, as you see, of course, so as I mentioned before, the criteria are like competitiveness, budget, market size, and so on. The market size in this case is a very good indicator, right? Because we don't have unlimited government customers, government clients. We have a very specific set of agencies within the state, within the country. So we have to be very, very careful of the relationship we build and how we leverage this relationship. Doing a mass email campaign to the government would actually make us look really, really bad to the government, and that wouldn't be really a good idea. Then, let's go to the next one. I did mention that I do like this recruitment SaaS platform example, but let's take this recruitment SaaS platform as an example that works primarily with B2B, right? Here, we can be more creative, let's say, because we can use marketing extensively. We can do SEO, content, paid channels, content marketing, email marketing, all sorts of marketing, offline marketing, even. We can do all of these because we have enough customers in this very specific segment, which is going to be whatever company is currently recruiting, right? So as long as you have one position open, you qualify as a customer. Of course, not in the necessarily specificity of this company, but let's say virtually, if you're a company that is recruiting, you do need a recruitment software. So marketing campaigns can work really well because they enable us to reach a very large amount of people in a very short amount of time, right? So we need just one person creating all the emails and then send them out to thousands of contacts. So marketing can be a very efficient strategy in this case. The other one is, of course, product. I mean, SaaS platforms, tech products in general, they are very flexible and very adapted in terms of product development. So we could create personalized features, specific features for certain customers. We can have like we can enhance the user experience. We can increase conversion through in-app or like in-product purchases. We can create like new features that target to different customers and so on, right? So product is really an asset that we can use and we should be using to attract different sets of clients. And then, of course, the other strategy we can use is more direct sales. We can use cold outreach, social selling, cold calling, anything, right? Events, so everything that brings us in touch directly with our customers, we can do that, right? So B2B, a lot of marketing, product, and of course, sales. And now, last case is an e-commerce company. And let's say it's an e-commerce company that sells tennis rackets, because I do love tennis. So e-commerce company targeted primarily at B2C. Now, when we're talking about B2C, and let's say people that love tennis and they need a racket, we're talking about a very big number of people, right? With the level, like with the extra difficulty that these people are individuals, right? So they're not affiliated to any company. So it's not that we can send like cold emails to everyone that loves tennis in the world and say, hey, I saw on your LinkedIn profile that you love tennis. Why don't you buy a racket on our website? So that would be nonsense, right? Nobody would do that. So what can we do instead for a B2C type of company, right? So the first thing would be, again, product related, but more in terms of product range, right? So we want to make sure that we have a very big, high quality product range that can help us, of course, cater to different type of customers. Maybe you prefer a bigger racket, smaller racket, you want to Wilson ahead or whatever else, right? So you want to have the choice, because if you give people the choice, well, then you have more chances that you have more people that can buy from you. If you sell only one type of racket, you're limiting yourself, right? So product range. The second one is marketing, and specifically social media, right? So once again, here we can use targeted marketing campaigns, social media advertising, influencer partnerships. So we also have an element of partnerships, content, SEO, community building. You could organize tournaments, for example. You can sponsor events at your local club and so on. And then the last one, last idea or last tactic we could use is to have loyalty programs, right? So we can use our current customer base to get other people, right? To get referrals, you can have discounts, you can have referral links that people can use, and so on, right? With the idea, of course, of increasing your brand loyalty and make sure that you have repeated customers, right? It is not the case that I mentioned these e-commerce companies. There is one specific company in the Netherlands. It's called Tennis Direct, which I took as a case study for this one. And Tennis Direct is amazing. Every time I have to buy something tennis related, I don't even check other companies. I just go there because they do an amazing job at engaging us with emails. Like I just received an email today, for example, and in this email, I saw a picture of one of our tennis coaches at the tennis school where I take classes, right? So it was really engaging. And I was like, oh, wow, I know this guy. That's so cool. And then I checked the website and see what else I could buy. I didn't buy anything today, though. Maybe later. So these are all the three cases that we can look at. I chose specifically these three because I really wanted to highlight like the difference, specifically in market size, right? Because I think if you don't know anything else and you just know the market size can be a very reliable indicator of which type of strategies and tactics you should be implementing. Keeping in mind, of course, that all companies virtually what they want is to grow revenue, so eventually to get new customers. Next time you're thinking about what else can I do, really look at the strategy that is that really enables you to get the most results in the shortest amount of time, right? Now, next steps before we go to the Q&A. As you know, at the BD School, we're all about business development knowledge and information. We do have a certification program. If you're interested and you want to learn more about BD, improve your skills and increase your value on the job market, you can do that. You can apply for the course at this link.